Welcome to another episode of Charge the Line. I'm your host, Roger Narvaez, with my good friend, Tony Perez here. It's been a while. It's been a while since we've been able to bring you guys an episode. But unfortunately, today's going to be a little bit of a somber one. A lot of people know that follow us, that follow the podcast, that know me and Tony personally, what's been going on. And so just for you listeners that aren't aware, we did lose one of our brothers. He was actually a guest. When Your Back's Against the Wall is the title of the episode. It was episode number 20. Mark Solis lost his fight with cancer this past week. It's really thrown everybody into I don't know, man. It's just been hard. It's been hard. But today we have two guests that we thought would do justice to paying Mark remembrance, and that's Captain Cody Eyring and Captain Jack Arnold. So they're here with us today to record. So thank you guys, because today is Memorial Day, and appreciate you guys taking the time to come on this holiday and kind of pay remembrance to Mark. So first of all, let's get into a little bit of y'all's background. Cody, how long have you been in?
I've been in the fire department for 16 years.
16 years, and your dad was a captain for
my dad was a captain since they fought fire with buckets of water.
Yeah,
he was in the department for 40 years.
The old school smoke eater for sure, yes, sure. Sir. And Jack, yourself?
I came in 2003 with the Class of America.
Okay, that's America. That's one of the most infamous classes.
Just ask them.
Come through. Yeah. Awesome. And you currently serve as a captain at
Station 4. Yeah.
Station 4. Mm-hmm. And Cody, you were a captain at Station 10, which is consistently the busiest station in the amongst the department, but also amongst the nation as far as the ambulance is concerned. And you just recently decided to jump.
Just recently decided to jump ship against the decision of my heart, I guess, but it's a little closer to home. So now I'm at Station 17.
Yeah, that's nice.
A little bit of adjustment, but
it's nice to be right down the street.
Oh yeah,
right down the street. So that's good. And then Jack, you served at Station 3, the rescue station, for a big part of your career, correct?
I did. I started out at 10s, and then I spent a short stint with Cody's dad at 13s right before I promoted to driver, and then I spent most of my career driving at 3s. And awesome. Then once I just made captain, I guess a little over a year ago, ended up over at Station 4.
Station 4. Yeah, that's a good spot for you, man, especially with all the rescue background you got. So, yeah, man, we'll jump right into it. This last week, one thing I can say is that the outpouring of support amongst our department, amongst really the public, has been special. If you don't know Mark, or you didn't know Mark, you definitely see the people that, even my wife is having people at her work coming up to her and talking about how they knew him from high school or baseball or whatever the case was, and he obviously had such a profound impact on anybody he came across. Personally for me, I met Mark when I worked at Station 1, and we rode the box together at that time, and that was when it was fun down there. We still had the neighborhood, and
hey, it's still fun down there.
Yeah, not as fun as it used to be. As fun as it used to be. The call volume and making the kind of calls that we made, the house fires, and patrolling the streets was definitely different than what it is now. But I hold those years close to my heart, and unfortunately, I was able to. When I promoted, I got thrown into training, and our department at the time put Mark on special assignment because of his condition, and allowed him to assist there as a instructor which they couldn't, that couldn't have been a better place for him going through what he was going through. And something that I tell the guys, and I made a comment, and I said, we got guys that don't even want to come to work, and this dude was fucking showing up on his, like, literally
day after his chemos.
Day after his chemos, Tuesday. We had live burns, and he showed up in the morning to help us out, and he was literally dying, and he still made the time to help myself, to help Captain Sierra and the training division out with the cadets, and that just shows what kind of person he was. So, let's get into a little bit of y'all's background with Mark, and we'll start with you, T. I know you've known him for a long time, but you met him in the fire department.
Yeah, for sure. First part of my career was on A shift, and then it wasn't until I made driver that I came to C shift. And C shift was there. It's a funny group. There are a lot of real tight guys, and the softball team. They're on all the shifts, but they had a big. At that time, Mark was like, what do you guys call the captain of the softball team? What would it be? What was
basically the godfather of the softball team?
The what?
The godfather.
Yeah. The godfather. Okay.
But he was basically coach manager. And since my time, he's run the whole ship.
And so that's like one whole group,
right.
Of friends that they have their annual Vegas trip, and there's a bunch of stories about that. But just working on the same shift, and we became friends. And really with the baseball world with our kids, and Drew, his son, is a little older than Isaac, but man, Mark is a badass baseball coach, and he could connect with kids very well, communicate with kids at their level, and he constantly was, just like in the fire service, like always researching. And you all know, we're all gonna share stories, but I mean, the guy must have had insomnia, because he'd like send TikToks at all hours of the night. Evening and night and early morning hours. And I'm sure with everybody, it's a different type. Like our stuff was a lot of baseball, a lot of fire department stuff, a lot of baseball stuff. And man, we love to talk about plays and dinks and like trick plays and stuff. And that's the stuff that we would say. So but really with our kids and our sons playing baseball, like I said, a little bit of a gap. And although they did play at high school at the same time for a little while. And then, like the most recent was just, that was my guy to talk to about baseball and high school baseball, and trying to find a college for Isaac to go to, and what he should be doing, and all of those things, and advising him. And that was a big part of it. But no, working together too, it's like I told the cadets, we did that workout with them last Friday. It's like Mark's like one of a kind. Like there's not a lot of firefighters that are like him. You're not gonna find firefighters like him,
right?
And we had him on the episode 20. And the first part of the episode was like right now, talking about the fire department. And one of the conversations that we had after the episode, he was, man, a lot of my family, they thought it was real interesting, like us talking about the fire department, because it was like they didn't know the acronyms and stuff that we were talking about. Like we're talking about stations and shifts and nozzles and all that stuff. But it was like, man, that was like a part of their life, a part of his life that they hadn't seen. So and they could see the passion, right? Because he's a passionate firefighter and cared. And like, as of recently, I mean, the guy was doing all this research with our hoses and what we have on our nozzles, and like really like a student of the craft, right? And like trying to figure out like what's the best thing for us, and cared. Like was like people were going to him like, hey, like what should we be pulling off the trucks? What should we be using? Which, size are we using, the right nozzles? And I'm talking about not just like other drivers, like our administration staff was going to him. He wrote up, I know I sent it to you. Yeah. He did the driver's orientation. He was going out there, field testing, pedo testing, figuring out what the best is, because he cared, and there's not a lot of people like that. Yeah. And for me, I love to talk shop. I love to talk about the fire department. We've all worked together at different stations and parts of different, when we're in this department, and the guys that take the job serious, and the guys that care, and when you're in their presence, it's like you have to up your game. And I mean, that's the one thing I can say about him, is like he made us all better.
Yeah, he was one of those guys. He was one of those guys for sure. That, I mean, I know on the ambulance, and I would tell the cadets, I said, even when I would lose patients, Mark was always kind of that level-headed guy, soft-spoken.
It's a good cop, bad cop.
Good cop, bad cop. Well, anytime anybody rode with me, I was always bad cop, good cop, because I was always, they had to be. But Mark was real special in that way, that he wouldn't let things get to him. and that was something that I pulled away from riding with him, and was able to kind of lean on him at times. Is he wasn't one of those dudes that bitched about calls or bitched about our frequent flyers. He just did his job, and he did it well. And that's, when he promoted, a lot of guys, honestly, sometimes they promote to get off the ambulance just for that reason. And Mark didn't. Like, he promoted, he got to his driver position, and he was determined to be the best driver that he could be. And I think that he did that. He definitely exemplified.
He took it serious. He did it for the right reasons, and we got two C shifters here and two B shifters, and it was like, that's probably the perfect transition, that he went to be a driver and then went to jump ship, went to B shift. And man, we'll turn it over to you guys. I mean, that's where y'all really had the experience, with him on B shift.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Similar thing. I met Mark when back in when I came in. I think most of the new cadets went to Station 1. We were on a different shift. I was on B shift, he was C shift, but we still talked and got to know each other. But it really got close probably, I'd say, about 10 years ago through softball. Started dating Angela. I knew Angela very well from also working at Del Mar Precept in the hospitals and stuff, and basically became, in my eyes, like family. It was one of those, we'd go on double dates with my wife and Angela. Then when he promoted to driver, he came to tens, and that's where it really got tight. I mean, we were there every day, and even though he'd been in 16, 17 years at that time, I'd probably been in 10 years or so, it was like we learned something every day together. And his mentorship and his leadership, even from the driver position, which, quite honest, you don't see a lot. He helps guys in so many ways that was like a median between crew and officer. Some of the guys that didn't want to go to their officer and sound like they didn't know what they were doing, or ask a question that they didn't want to look down upon, they could go to Mark. And Mark just had a way with teaching. He had a way, like y'all said earlier, with connecting with people on whatever level they needed to be connected on, and he just did an amazing job. And there couldn't have been, like you said, any better place for him to be put on special assignment than in our training division to impact these young guys and teach them the right way and make sure everything was covered. And then he left and he went to threes, unfortunately for me.
Sad day for Cody.
Good for this guy over here to my left, but sad day for me. But his personality and his positivity with everything, even going through his battle with his illness, there was a lot of people that really didn't even know what was going on, because he didn't try to hide it. He would talk to you and be straight honest. But his positivity and his outlook on everything, dude never didn't have a smile on his face whenever he was in front of people. And he could talk to you, I'm sure y'all can think, but sometimes I felt like a high school girl, dude, because we'd be on the phone for like 2 hours talking about.
If the phone rang and it was him, I had to like clear out, like I make sure I don't have anything for the next minimum 30 minutes, probably hour and a half, because we're going to talk.
Yeah. And it was, he had a little chair in his office at home that's where he would sit so he could be away from everybody. And we could talk about anything and everything. And like you were saying about some of the new stuff in the training division with the hydraulics and the hoses, and we went on for hours sometimes. And then the personal connection in softball, going to the Vegas trips, that's one of the reasons we look forward to it every year, was to hang out. I mean, my wife never really wanted to go, and then once she went the first time and hanging out with Mark and Angela, realizing what it was like, now it was a trip that she looked forward to every year just because of that alone, just that relationship. So I think one thing that Mark did, like Roger said at the very beginning, he's impacted so many people. And, with what happened, people are struggling with the fact that he's not here and things like that. But one thing I like to say that I'll probably repeat if we talk about anything else is that was Mark's impact. And every time he talked to you, he gave you a piece of him. You know what I mean? And the family likes to say he loved hard, right? And he gave you a piece of him to carry on and put everything he had into everything that he did, especially family, especially the department, baseball. He lived with a passion that you don't see quite often, you know what I mean? And I just want people to remember that he gave you that piece of him, and it's going to be there forever. So it's not necessarily a goodbye in this situation. It's a remember the impact he had on you, and that piece of himself that he gave when he loved so hard. So
I think for me, The hard part is we thought we had more more time with him. I think everybody probably thought that because of his demeanor and the way that he didn't want to put his worries on everybody else. I know on the podcast we talked about it, and we had guys going over to help him cut his yard and stuff when he couldn't, but when he could, he did, yeah. You know, and he didn't want to burden anybody, even us there at the training ground. You know, we had our cadets, we had things going on, and quite frankly, even though people think not a lot goes on there is a lot, especially me being there now and seeing it. And he was an intricate part of that well-oiled machine, and you know, never ever took his days and put them on us. It was, we could tell when he wasn't feeling good, and he would talk to us about it, but he never burdened us with that. You know, we would tell him go home, like, hey, just relax, we got it. He's like, no, I'll come in, if you know, I'll see how I feel. And I would tell him, just stay in the office, dude. You don't need to be out there in the sun. You know, you don't need to be out there with our guys. We got it. And we always tried to make his load a little bit lighter, but he never wanted that. He always, you know, wanted to make our load lighter, even in his battle. And that just goes to show the kind of person he was. And something that Tony had brought up before, and he kind of mentioned right now, was, you know, this situation is unique because you got two guys on B shift, you got two guys on C shift that he worked with, but both of our perceptions of him are exactly the same. You know, oftentimes you talk about people and somebody might have an experience over here with them, but Mark, all across the board, I don't think there's anybody that has anything bad to say about him. I never ran into somebody that rode with him and was complaining about it, or, you know, and we all joshed each other, we all poked and prodded, but he never did it in a malicious way. And it's just because that's the kind of guy he was, you know. I mean, the simple fact, and it's kind of funny, and I hope I'm not, you know, intruding or getting too personal, but the simple fact that Angela and Lori, you know, his ex-wife and his current, you know, wife were so close. You know, he was just that glue. That's just the kind of guy he was. That unit that they had is so unique because they could all be there together and not have any kind of issues, which you don't often see.
It's not typical. It's not the norm.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Jack, you want to?
Yeah, so, you know.
Get your mic a little bit closer.
My first experiences with Mark were kind of like, you know, working on C shift, and as we always kind of joke, you know, working on different shifts, like working on different planets.
Yeah,
sometimes different universes. Yeah, you know. You know, so I had experiences working with him through the years, you know, and he was always kind of one of those guys where, you know, you didn't feel like you were on a different planet anymore. You were like still one of the guys, you know. He'd give you a hard time, you know, in the best kind of way, and make you feel like part of the group, you know. And I mean, that's just, you know, a testament to who he was. Yeah. But so I spent some time working with him a little bit over time, and then you know, as we do sometimes, we play fantasy firefighter, and once Stu Gosey went from driving Rescue 3 and went to 40 hour and does all the stuff he does now, then we were kind of left with a hole, like, what are we going to do? That was a big shoes to fill.
Well, especially at that station, right?
Sure.
At that station.
Yeah. So at that point, you know, I think, you know, Captain Clearman is like the best when it comes to fantasy firefighter. And
recruitment.
Yeah.
He just looked to my station.
Yeah. He knows how to build a team.
Yeah, he knows how to build a team.
Yeah.
So he did it. He worked his magic, you know. And so he ended up convincing Mark to come over, and so I moved over and drove the rescue, and I drove for Captain Nervise, and when it all played out in the end, you know, Mark came over and drove the engine for Captain De La Garza, and he just kind of fit immediately, like, you know, especially at that place. Every station has their own things, you know, I mean, their own way of doing business, but that place in particular, it's it can be kind of a tough place to kind of step into and you know, immediately like fall into your role. And it was like just the most crazy thing how it was just effortless with him. And so, you know, I like to always fancy myself as I was a pretty good driver, and he came in there and he took the role over, and you know, we would talk shop quite a bit, and it was always pretty amazing to me like how much you know, passion he had for the job, but it never felt like, you know, it never felt like an effort.
Right.
He just kind of did this stuff. It just kind of came natural for him. And, you know, we had, you know, with Medic 3 coming online and all that stuff, Mark made all the young cats feel good and, you know, just handled his business the right kind of way, you know. So we spent that time, you know, that we had there, and we had some good memories, you know.
Yeah.
It was fun for sure.
Yeah.
So he was a lot of fun to work with, and like, you know, like everybody says, it's like he left an indelible mark on the department. Anybody that came in contact with him, whether you knew him for 1 minute or, you know, I mean, you know, since you came in, like he just had that kind of impact on people where, you know, he just made everybody feel welcome. But it wasn't like there was authenticity to it.
Right.
You know, like
Yeah.
it wasn't just like, you know, disingenuous in any kind of way. And like, you know, and when I say that, it's because if you're a new guy, you know, he was going to give you a hard time, but in the best way to make you feel like you're part of it.
Right.
Not sitting on the fringes outside. And he would, you know, have fun with you and stuff like that. But at the same time, he knew what the rank structure was, and he knew how to treat the bosses the right way and take care of them and make sure job was easy for them. So he was just, you know, one of those guys, you know, I mean, you can't, there's never going to be another person that replaces that void, you know?
No, for sure, man. And it's funny because Tony always talks about and Mark actually brought it up, you know, that the driver position is kind of the mediator, right, between the crew and the captain. The captain wants something done and the crew is kind of like against it or like bitching about it. He can kind of go into the captain's ear and kind of let him know what's going on without causing any kind of disruption or dissension within the unit. And he really was that piece that I think, you know, held the crews together in that way, which is not an easy task to do when you have so many different personalities. That's the crazy thing. I compare the fire department to jiu-jitsu all the time because it's kind of the same way with jiu-jitsu. It's like we get people from all walks of life that have one common bond, which is jiu-jitsu. And in the fire department, it's the same way. You've got guys that are athletes. You got guys that are, you know, have their own businesses. You've got guys that are computer nerds, you know, and they all fit. And Mark somehow always found a way to just correlate to everybody, you know, to get along with everybody. And that was something as a driver that, you know, there's other guys out there that can do that, but there's not a lot. And there definitely isn't any, you know, like you said, Mark's Mark. And
you just wanted to be around him. Like, so it's funny story is that, so when I was, I'm on C shift. And then, so when I was down the street, just station 1, and Mark so now he was driving at 3s, and then he would work overtime. A lot of times he'd stay at 3s. They always want to keep those guys there, you know? And I was at 3s for years. And so, you know, I'd go back to 3s every now and then, but if Mark was working, like I was going to go visit.
Right.
And he'd send me a text, like, I'm working overtime today. And it's like, I knew I was going to go by. So it was like a joke. Like, if I walked in station 3, it was like, oh, Mark, because Mark's here, right? that was why I was going over there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I like Mark. I don't like you guys.
Yeah, I'm not here for y'all.
Yeah, I like Mark. And then we were going to catch up on like everything, you know.
Yeah.
And so there was those conversations that I'll never, you know, always keep with, you know, remember that it was a time to sit down with him at the coffee table or wherever in the engine room, and we were going to talk and chat and laugh and just, you know, give people a hard time, but in like the best way. I mean, not even at all like mean spirited, just really funny, you know.
Mark had a funny way of like cutting you down without you realizing.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know the sarcasm. I'm not real sure exactly what, but you know the connection is what Jack said is authenticity. You know, he's so authentic, it came natural to him,
right?
And that's why I think we all connect, and we were all like, this guy's like for real, like he's the real deal, you know. So it was very easy to be vulnerable in front of him, for him to be vulnerable in front of you. Like, it's just a good person, and you just don't see that a lot. And that's why I say it's like he's a one of a kind. I mean, yeah, that's it, you know.
And I always, you know, finding out the news, and that's one thing that really got me is when he came in to talk about, you know, his battle and you know, going through what he'd been going through. He never, at least it never appeared like he had lost that fight. You know, like he was set, and it was. And he said it, you know, he has a saying that now I'm going to, you know, carry with me for the rest of my life, but it's win the day. He never looked past, you know, the week or the month or stressed about what's going to happen in the future, at least not to where he wanted you to worry that he was worrying. You know, he was always enthusiastic. He was always positive for the most part. Now, I know there's some people that he confided in his hard times, and you know, I'm glad he had those people to talk to, because we all need that, but he didn't want to put that on everybody. There's a lot of people that go into those battles and they just give up, or they take that pity party role, and Mark definitely wasn't one.
He never played the victim. He never played the victim in the department. He didn't play the victim ever. Like, he never said, why me? I mean, that wasn't his thing. That wasn't what he was going to do, you know?
even in those struggle conversations about his illness on the rough times, because he definitely had some ups and downs, he always finished with positivity.
Yes.
You know, he may have been opening up and letting you know, like, hey, this is what's been going on, and there was some you know, oh shit, like scans and stuff like that, but he always ended the conversation back with positivity of, we're gonna fight, we're gonna win today, and then we'll go on to tomorrow, and we're gonna win that day, and so on and so forth. So even during his struggles, he always made sure to end positively, and that's, you don't see a lot of people, like Chief just said, people kind of pity me, play the victim, and he, not at all.
No, yeah, he definitely, I mean, at least, you know, in the training division there, he like I said, we would always try to get him to take it easy, and we knew when he was hurting, and he would be hurting a lot of the times, you know, coming back after his treatments, and you know, I knew it started to get worse probably the last 2 weeks, because those were probably the most days that he actually like stopped showing up as much. But before that, it was always like he'd have a rough day and then he'd be right back. You know, he'd bounce back, and you know, I had a kind of a feeling, I guess, but you don't, like I say, he always presented himself in such a way where you're like, no, he's gonna beat this. You know, and I think that's the thing. I know Captain Sierra and myself have both taken it pretty hard, and you know, Captain Sierra, he was there. Mark got there almost immediately, either right before him or right after him, actually. You know, and he was always checking on him, and you know, Mark just never wanted to burden us with his workload. He always wanted to, you know, lighten ours. And for somebody going through what he was going through, you wouldn't expect that focus to be on other people. Like, you'd expect that to just be like, I just need to worry about me, and that's the farthest thing from what he did or the way he acted. You know, you know, I'll always carry his positivity and his enthusiasm for the job. No matter if he was feeling like shit and he had to sit down to teach, he always gave it 110% and was always willing to do whatever he was asked to do. You know, your cord messing up or what?
Yeah,
you losing?
I lost.
You're good. I can still hear you. I think it's just sometimes these things are, you know.
Jack, he told me before that y'all's routine in the morning, as drivers, y'all would get up like earlier than everybody, clean the kitchen up, and then wash the trucks. Just you and him.
Well, so like everything with Mark was like a funny competition, and so he when he got there, like, you know, I told him, I was like, you know, he's like, hey man, you know, the way he talked, like he was like kind of like, you know, low voice, like he had like the voice for radio, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
You know?
Hey,
and
bro.
So you know, I don't want to try and do the impression.
No, yeah.
But like, anyways, he came over and he was like, what's it like over here? You know, like, what do we got to do? And I'm like, well, you know, I've been told since I got here that drivers run the station. And so we would always, you know, kind of laugh at that a little bit, you know, because we all know, like, it's a great thing to tell your driver, but at the end of the day, you know, the burden falls on the golden badge, you know?
Right.
And so, but like those guys over there, like, you know, Captain Clearman, Captain De La Garza, like they gave us enough stroke to be able to kind of like, you know, get the guys going the direction they need to. And so when it came to stuff like truck day, you know, so once Mark got the lay of the land, like, okay, man, this is how it's going to work over here. We would, you know, he would kind of make a competition. Like I'd go out there and I'd be working on the truck, you know, doing stuff. And then I'd come back out and I'd look at his wheels, and his wheels would be like perfect, like just polished, like perfect. And he'd be like, look what I did. And then I'd be like, and then so I'd, you know, next week, next truck day we would have, I'd go out there and I'd get on it and I'd do this. And he'd be like, you making me look bad, you know, kind of stuff like that. So we had fun with it. And then our morning routine, like he realized like I'm a pretty early riser. So I'd get up and I'd you know, do the dishes and that weren't done from the night before. And then, you know, I'd get the coffee made, and sometimes I, you know, get on the rower or something like that. And he'd come out and be like, damn, son, you know, like kind of messing with me a little bit. And so he started getting up early with me, and he was like, you know, always kind of like, that's what we do, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we kind of had like a little friendly competition that way, where we'd kind of get up and we would try and we'd pull the trucks out like right when the tones would go off, you know, Mitchell Post
style. I was gonna say that right when the starts, when the tones go off, the truck starts.
So we'd laugh about that, thinking about Poe, you know, and like we'd kind of try and do that. We didn't do it all the time, of course, but we'd do that sometimes. We'd try and have the trucks all washed, and we'd have fun, kind of laughing at the guys, because everybody wants to help, you know, and they come out and be like, "Well, it's already done," and we're like, "Yeah, man, you know, time's ticking here."
It's 6:32.
We got work to do.
Yeah, so we had a good, you know, we had friendly competitions that way, and I kind of said, like, you know, like I always kind of fancied myself a pretty good driver, and then within a period of a few months of him being there, I kind of realized that, like, man, that like the torch has been passed in some ways. It's weird, you know, what the way ranks go. I mean, like, he'd been in longer than me and all. But like Mark knew every street like the back of his hand.
Yeah.
And, you know, for anybody that hasn't ever worked with Captain De La Garza, you would be hard pressed to find somebody that's going to get in that truck quicker. And like, he is ready to go, like, instantly. And so like Mark would always be there, like ready, and like never miss a beat. And man, like, you were not going to beat them. So we just gave up. We resigned. And no, like in you know, like Big A always used to say, you know, as far as Rescue 3 goes, that cow ain't got no milk. So like,
for you guys that are listening, so Rescue 3 is a rescue truck. It doesn't have any water. So the joke is, why you guys hurrying to get there? You can't do anything without, you know, without water anyway. So.
Yeah, for sure. And then once we got out of 1292 and we got into the new rescue, the tandem axle, the thing was so slow, we weren't going to beat anybody anyway. So there was no point, you know.
Yeah.
And you weren't going to beat Jeff, and you weren't going to beat Mark.
Yeah.
And they were going to get there, and we're going to be, you know, we're going to be looking at, you know, back of engine 3. And so it was friendly competition. He never let me let that, you know, I would never get to leave it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, he was going to come back. He's like, man, well, where are you? You're so far back in the side. I could barely see you back there, you know. And I was like, hey, man.
It's true what Jack is saying. Before the fire department, he worked FedEx, and he would do FedEx part-time, like in the holidays and stuff. The guy knew every street in this town.
Yeah.
Block numbers. And
it was crazy, because it wasn't just the streets.
Yeah.
It was every part of the job. And so, like, you know, I mean, you kind of get to your comfort zone, and you stay in that comfort zone, you know. And so, but like Mark never had a comfort zone with regards to, like, you know, technology. So as the new hose was coming out, and, you know, they were always kind of, you know, engine 3 calf's truck. And so they were always like, you know, my experience with it when I drove, you know, I think it was 1257 was the unit number I drove. It's an engine 3, right?
Yeah.
The one
the one I was on too.
And so like the calves on that thing, it never worked like you could mess some people up a little bit if they weren't ready for it, but 1233 when it came out, the calves had been several generations of that, so it was so much better. And when I first started driving 1233, like we were still living in 1257 days.
Yeah.
So we weren't too much worried about calves. Like, and Captain Clearman's kind of old school. So he's like,
water's going to put it out.
Water's going to put it out.
Been doing it for
decades.
But, Mark and was never going to like not dive headlong into like the unknown. And so they got to the point where he was coming up with stuff, and I was just going off of like the old Captain Villarreal. I had that stuff down, and Mark would start throwing me stuff. He's like, "What do you think about this? What do you think about this?" And initially, your ego gets in the way, and you're like, "Well, whatever." And you kind of try and just say, "Well, this is it." And then he starts just giving you so much knowledge that he's learned over the years, and not just like learned it by reading books, but they would get out there and they would drill and they would do all this stuff. And so he'd come back and, like P-tope gauges and stuff like that. Like really getting into it. And so at the end, I was just like, I don't even know about this stuff no more, man. Yeah. Like you really, he really knew the job really, really well, and was just like kind of one of those guys that like, for as long as he had been in, he never lost, never kind of like got bored with the job, was always curious and wanting to do stuff.
Yeah. Up until we talk about these new hoses and these nozzles and all this stuff, the friction losses stuff that he was in the computer. If he couldn't be out there with us, he was still doing something. Like he couldn't just sit there, he was always working. Yeah. He was always working, whether it was physical or whether it was on the computer, like researching. Man, up until the last week, he's sending us videos. On different new equipment that we're going to be getting in and things of that nature. And this is how it works, and this is how they want us to use it. And it's like, man, you should be at home chilling, bro. Like,
yeah,
yeah, he was like I've always kind of joked, like I'm kind of like an analog guy in a digital world.
Right. Me too, brother.
Mark was, he would always like, he'd be sending me videos and TikToks or whatever you call it, and he'd send you stuff and he's like, check this out, and like whatever, like, oh dude, that's cool, and he just constantly was like curious looking and stuff like that, and it was neat to see.
Yeah,
definitely learned a lot.
Well, like you said, especially we get complacent, and we if it's working and it's what they say, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
It's kind of what Jack's saying too, is comfort, right?
Yeah,
like getting out of your comfort zone. He's willing to get out of that. Like we get comfortable. It's like, this works, this is what I'm gonna do, I know this works every time,
right?
Like this is it. And he was willing to, because I know with Engine 10 too, the hitting the deck gun from the outside, that was, if you're not going to put it out, he's going to like try to hit it from the outside. I don't know, he was like that was his thing at threes also.
That was the first thing he was doing, especially like on little grass fires or car fires. He immediately got out and went there and rotated that deck gun around to try to hit it before we could hit it.
Yeah,
he loved the deck gun.
Yeah, he loved the deck gun. Dude, y'all know that.
He got videos. He shows a video of the guy struggling to put out a fire, and then he's telling somebody, hey, just use the deck gun. And finally they let him do it, and he puts it out. And
I was there.
Oh, are you?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. It was like on the corner of like Elizabeth and like 15th or something. And so Mark always used to like, with regards to him and I, it was always like Bo and Luke or Starsky and Hutch. And if anybody knows Mark, knows he loved Top Gun. So it was always Maverick and Goose.
There you go.
And so we pulled up, and like vacant house or assumingly vacant house,
right.
In that territory. And the guys were struggling, like it was a lot of fire. And on Rescue 3, it was kind of like, you were kind of like you could kind of do what you wanted to do as a driver. But like we always had an unwritten rule, no matter who was there, that like you were going to help the engine driver if you thought they needed help.
Right.
And so like, you have to sit there and weigh this out. Man, do I want to go over here and have some fun, or do I want to go like help get a supply hooked up or whatever? And in this particular scenario, Mark and I had talked a lot. Mark loved the dead gun, so he would always talk about the dead gun. And so I come walking over there. I'm looking. I got my gear halfway on, and I'm standing there. I'm like, do I go over here with these guys or what? Mark's busy doing stuff, you know, Rescue 3's pulling a line off, Engine 3's pulling a line off, and they're doing all this stuff. Fire's just going. And it was one of those nights, like, I think it was like a blue norther or something like that. It was like just windy as all get out.
Yeah.
And exposures and all that stuff. And I come up there to the pump panel. I'm like, what you need, boss? And Mark's like, hey, man, let's hit the deck gun, you know? And I'm like, all right, man, cool. And I'll get you a plug. So I get him a plug real quick, and one right across the street there in the corner. And so he's like, the deck gun on Engine 3 is funny because the station's so old that you can't leave the deck gun on when you back in the bay.
You got to take it off.
You got to take it off. And so, like, you know, that process of having to do that here and there, like, it was having issues where you couldn't just leave the deck gun unmanned. You had to, like, stand up there and hold on to it because it would just want to, like, start spinning or something crazy, you know? And so Mark's like, you know, hop up there, and I hop up there, and he opens the deck gun up, and he just yelled at everybody on the fire field, you know, he's like, get out of the way. You know? And so you know, we hit the deck gun, and man, we put a hurting on it, you know? It was good. And Mark was like high-fiving, he was just like super excited about it, you know.
Yeah, it worked. That was one of the things
all the time. Even when he was in training, he'd hear the fire, and like sometimes him and Homer would go, and there was a fire at 3's. I don't remember where it was, but us and 3's made it, and he went over there and was helping Jess, and he's like, hey, just tell him you're gonna put the deck on. So here comes Jess over the radio, like, Engine 3 driver to come in, and put the deck on and put it out.
Knocked it out.
And it wasn't even driving. He wouldn't go and steal that into somebody else as far as, hey, this is what needs to be done, and it'll just like that. It was done.
People listen. Yeah. People listen, you know. Yeah, man. I mean, Mark was a special guy, and like I said, we all are hurting, you know. And to anybody out there that's listening that may be going through stuff, I know we all like to talk about, you know, Homer has a saying, man, I'm going to mess it all up, but he always tells a cadet, he's like, I ain't cried since I was born, and there's no video of that, or he says something along those lines, you know. But the impact that he's had has affected even the toughest of us, and we're going to miss him. But, you know, Tony, you said some great stuff to the cadets about keeping his memory alive, and one of the things that you said was do your job the best you can do it. If you want to keep his memory alive, you know, don't just meet the standard, you know, surpass that, because that's something that he did religiously, and that's something that I'm always going to remember him for. But you know, if anything, I want to kind of go through each of you guys and kind of, what is one thing, and anybody can start, whoever wants to start, but what is one thing you want people to remember about Mark, something that you want them to take away from the type of person he was, and that you're going to carry with you guys for, and you may have already said it, but let's rehash on it. You know, T, we'll just start with you.
His positivity. You don't meet a lot of people like that.
Yeah. Jack?
Yeah, for sure. Positivity, definitely. And, you know, Mark wasn't a reactionary. And, like, we live in this weird time where everybody's reactionary. And, like, no matter how big the situation or small, like, he just was super calm in the way that he would approach things. And that just kind of, you know, calm resolve that he had, you know, no matter how big the situation was. It was just something that is, like, remarkable, you know, and you want to emulate that. Right. Whether you're a firefighter or a human being, you're like, you know, just, nothing's really that big of a deal. Like, let's just get through it and we'll be all right. You know, that was kind of, I think, like his essence, you know.
Cody?
I think for me, it's like his socialness and his gravitational pull that he had on people. Didn't matter what he was doing or what y'all were doing, but everybody always seen him as like a moth to a light. Wherever Mark was at, that's where a group of people were going to be. And they were usually always laughing, chopping it up, telling stories. And that's rare, you know?
Yeah. So. I think for me, y'all all kind of touched on everything, but something that I remember him for is his storytelling. I don't know if there was a better storyteller that was out there. That dude could sit down and he'd make you feel like you were right there, you know, telling the stories. But as far as the kind of person he was, you know, for me, it was just amongst being positive and, you know, staying enthusiastic, being kind to people, something that I told Tony earlier after we did our Murph workout, which was brutal, was up until his last days, man, he lived life to the fullest. You know, he never let this battle define him. He spent the time that he needed to spend with his family. He loved them, and that's something that they know and that they see through all of this, and something that my wife brought up, you know, because when I found out, unfortunately, it was we were actually going to work out, and so I had set my alarm, and for whatever reason, I woke up a few minutes early, and, you know, I saw Tony's text. It was about 1:30, and he texted that Mark had passed, and, you know, I was like, oh my God. And so instantly, you know, I called, and, you know, I told my wife, I was all choked up, and I told her I got to go. I said, Mark's gone. And, you know, I hauled ass because Tony had said that they were going to see him off, you know. And so I think I was like in workout clothes, and I just went and showed up, and I was there, and I was glad I got to experience that and be there and be part of the procession. I know there's a lot of guys that are, you know, like most of us, a lot of people, I think, put their phones on silent or do not disturb or whatever, turn their ringers off at night. And I'm just fortunate that, you know, I was able to, because I know there's a lot of guys kind of kicking themselves right now. Not that they should. Like, this is not something that anybody should feel, you know, horrible about, as far as not being able to answer those text messages or phone calls, to be there. But, you know, I know for me, I was just glad that I was able to be there for him. I know you guys, I know Cody, you especially, are helping with the services, and you know, sometimes I always tell people, I'm like, man, you know, Mark's gone now. We got to keep his memory alive, but now it really becomes a family that we have to take care of, and that's something that makes a brotherhood so special, and that's something that Mark always talked about, and he said it in our podcast. There's nothing greater than the brotherhood. There's nothing like it, and we're seeing that now. And a lot of times we're putting our feelings aside and our burdens aside, in order to make sure that the people that Mark loved are taken care of, because that's our duty now. So I commend you guys, all three of you guys, for doing your parts. Jack, I know you're super involved with the union and have helped me out recently, and I thank you for that. And Cody, I know you're busy, you know, doing stuff. Tony, you're getting phone calls left and right. I know the training division itself has been tasked with certain duties that we'll you know, gladly take upon our plate to help out with, because we all loved them. You know, we all loved them, but at the same time, I want you guys and everybody listening out there to, you know, if you're going through something, if you need an ear to talk to, I mean, we still have to put ourselves. One thing that I said, it's hard to do, right? But I know Mark wouldn't want anybody crying or being depressed or sulking about his passing. And it's like we did a run with we did a stair climb for Mark. We did 23 rounds, 1 round up, down, and then you did 15 squats and 10 push-ups, and we did it with the cadets. And at the very end, we, you know, Tony carried his lid for, you know, his helmet for the whole thing, I think. And at the end, I said, let me have it, and I'll take it this last round. And we had the cadets, you know, everybody touched it at the top. And one thing I was telling, he had this megaphone that was passed on to him. Who did he say gave it to him? I forgot who he said gave it to him. Where that
megaphone came from.
He
tried to give it to you, I think.
He did give it to me, but I think I used it too much yelling at the cadets, and the battery died super fast. But he would call it Luther, you know. He would call it Luther, and I don't know why he named it that. I wish I would have found out, but he called it Luther, and you know, that was one thing that I told the cadets. I said, Mark's yelling from the heavens with his. I said, he's got a golden megaphone that God's given him, and he's telling you guys to hustle up. So I think it's super important that we just keep his memory alive and continue to move forward and do the best job. I think you said it best, you know, do the best job you can, and treat people accordingly, treat people the way that Mark did. And like I said, my experience on the ambulance with him, riding with him, seeing him interact for the years that I was fortunate enough to spend with him, with the other brothers and sisters in our department, he was never a dick. He was always just that guy that anybody could go to and talk to, and he was there for you, and I hope everybody remembers him for that stuff. So, we weren't going to drag this out too long. I'm thankful for you guys to be here, and I'm thankful that Mark had I'm thankful that Mark's impact on people is being reciprocated now. It's not much that we can do for him, but it's obvious that we're still doing it for his family, and we just want to leave the best. We want, with his services, we want this to go as smooth as possible and make it the best celebration of life, because that's truly what it is, that we can. So with that being said, I'm going to give everybody kind of the floor to just say any last words about him that you might want to say.
It's going to be hard.
Take your time.
I just want to make sure that we honor him and his family the right way.
We will, brother. I think we're all doing that right now. Jack?
Yeah, what's funny about, there's so many stories about, like, how he was and how he made people feel welcome, and it's important to remember that, as we all kind of move forward in this job, it's fun to, bust balls, do stuff we do, but, remember kind of like the spirit, how Mark did it.
Yes.
Like, there's ways to do things and whatnot. And I always kind of remember, he'd always see me and he'd be like, my man, and just the bond that I built with him, and it's just hard to look back and think about, because like I had plans, because I learned from the master. And so I was going to learn from Captain Clearman. And like Mark and I had plans, like, the truck driver, Matheson, he's only got a few years left. And so we'd always talk, and Mark would always joke, like, I'm going to take a test and promote. Mark is really one of the people that encouraged me to promote, to take the next step. And at threes, you have your own room if you're a driver. The senior driver did, right? On B shift, at least. And so every night, Mark would come into my room and he'd sit down, and like you said, you got to play and get ready for a talk. So we'd all, like, we'd be the last ones to bed, we'd be the first ones up. Technically Kyle would kind of fall asleep in the chair watching the TV, but so Mark would come back to my room and we'd talk shop and shoot the shit. For hours of my life, we did that all the time. And I had like and I'm just sharing stories, but I had a guitar that mostly just collected dust, and it had been there forever, and finally one day, out of the blue, it wasn't like he just now noticed it, he pulled it up and he's like, oh man, you got a guitar, let me check it out, right? And so he pulls a guitar up and I'm like, this son of a bitch is Esteban. Like, he starts playing guitar like crazy. I'm like, who are you, man? I don't even know you, and so just like all this stuff like that. And the suicide tacos from Hi-Ho.
Oh, man.
And, just all these little memories, like, that are just, cause all these emotions. They're crazy. And I don't care what anybody says, but that boy made the best chicken fried steak you've ever eaten in your life. Like, make a fat boy cry kind of stuff, And just all those memories that are like, they come flooding back in and stuff. And in recent times, we talked a lot. We talked, I think it was like 2 days before his passing, and the same thing. It was positive. I could hear a little bit in his voice, like, he was getting tired. Yeah. But nobody expected like this to happen the way that it has, But it's remarkable what we do as a firefighting family, And you know, Cody's working super hard, and everybody has been working really hard in the department, and you know, Chief Wade and Chief Mathachitz, and the things that they're all doing to make sure that he's honored the right way in the fight. And one of the things I want to touch on is like the impact that he had on us moving forward. And as there, you know, our family knows, firefighter family, like we're negotiating a contract, we're getting ready to bring it to the members for a vote. One of the, you know, a lot of times when you get into contract negotiations, the first thing and the thing that's talked about the most is the money.
Right.
But for, you know, Cody and I can probably speak to it. Like one of the major impacts that he had, if this contract passes, is the thing that will not get talked about that much. And two huge impacts that Mark directly made on this fire department, if this contract passes, moving forward from now until eternity, is that the Cancer 1 test and the sick leave pool, which Cody can probably talk about a little bit, is that Mark was specifically mentioned with regards to these conversations that happened at the table with the city, and we were able to put a person to the reason why we needed to do this. And you know, like the thing to remember is that, like, you know, if we had this in the past, this one test, maybe it would have potentially caught this earlier, you know. And the thing, it's hard not to get like a little bit emotional or upset about that. Like, why didn't he have the opportunities? You know, why wasn't this available to him? But I think the thing to remember and the thing to cherish is that, like, it's because of him that we were looking at having this, so that there won't be another day where we're sitting around having a talk like this. Yeah. That this stuff gets caught earlier. You know, I mean, it's something that as firefighters that we all know is a real risk out there. It's not the scary fire. It's not the person with a gun, or it's not the, you know, working on the highway, cars and stuff like that. It's the silent killer. It's the cancer. And it's the, you know, I mean, what we're exposed to, you know, I mean, diesel exhaust, you know, a third of your life. You know, byproducts of all the fire and stuff like that. You know, I mean, it's because of Mark that we're able to be able to talk about these things and be able to mention a person. And so, like, you know, I felt like he had a purpose, you know, I mean, and it's huge for people moving forward. It's huge for families. His family is like suffering, going through all this stuff. But, you know, I mean, I felt like he was himself until the very end. Yeah. And like that, you know, he left this legacy, and this legacy would be that he's made the job better in every way, shape, and form. Whether it was, you know, being nice to a young person that just comes in and starting their career, or whether it's changing the way that we protect firefighters moving forward. Like, he had a purpose in this department, and it was more meaningful than what we will probably ever really understand. You know, and I hope that, you know, in talking about it, people ever really remember what he did for all of us.
That's one thing that Homer, I know one of the last texts he said and he messaged, and I know he messaged the Chiefs too, or maybe the Union guys, I'm not sure, but he said, please see this fucking through, because up until Mark's passing, like a day before, that was the last message that he had sent Homer, was something in regards to all the stuff about the cancer, and you know, having that issue taken care of, so that nobody else has to go through what he went through. And it wasn't about him, it was about his brothers, and doing that for us, you know. So I'm glad you brought that up. Cody, any last words?
Well, one thing I'll say that Jack mentioned too, no disrespect to Hi-Ho, but I think Mark made the suicide tacos famous. I've already gotten 2 or 3 photos of people going to Hi-Ho and taking pictures saying in honor of Mark, and they got a picture of a suicide taco. I think just the other day, that's why Angela and the family went over there to eat breakfast and saw a couple other guys, Chris and Jeremy. So, but to speak a little on what Jack said, I think Mark always made a positive difference when he was here, and even leading up to, like what he was talking about with the contract. It was a relatable thing that we could directly directly show the city, like, this is why this matters. And we have, unfortunately, we've had people in the past that, you know, have had similar issues, but it made it extremely relatable in that moment to help push those things through. So without even him knowing, he made a positive impact for changes that, like Jack said, are going to be there in our contract forever now, and hopefully be able to catch some of these things way early and be preventable. And then the other thing that everybody talks about is hey, this person's doing that and this person's doing that. It's all a team, and I think that's what Mark lived for, was the support, the camaraderie, and the love of everything that he did, he put into, whether that was family, fire department, friends. So I think that's what everybody's just trying to carry on, and just remember those are three staples that should carry on. And like I said earlier, it's Mark impacted a bunch of people, and I've talked to a lot of people, and they're, you know, one of the first things they say is when they call is like, hey, I know I wasn't as close to you, and I kind of stop them right there and say that the sizable difference of personable is between you and Mark. You know what I mean? Just, he may have made an impact on you that made a greater difference than anything you did with somebody else. So don't try to compare yourselves to the personability that you had with them, because that's between you and him. And remember, like I said, that those impacts, he gave you a piece of them, and that's what's going to live on. So he's not gone. You know, his memory and those impacts and those differences that he made in you, he expects you to do the same throughout your life and your career. And that's what we should live by, is the support and the passion and the love that he had for everything that he did. And the family knows that, and we're going to continue to support them. You know, I was just telling Angela and the family yesterday that this isn't for the next 2 weeks, this is forever.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a good point.
And that kind of, you know, they already knew, but when you hear the words, it actually kind of resonates a little bit. So, and I think everybody that's a part of this is all a team, and everybody's doing the same amount of work that they can. There's not one person doing this and one person doing that. We're a group doing all of it. So just carry on the way that he would, and he's probably looking down now and willing to play the guitar, or you know, drink a couple of shots of tequila or whatever it was that would get the socialness going between everybody. Because that's what I said, he just had this rare gravitational pull that not many people have. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. So just remember those things.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you guys for coming in. You know, you're exactly right about, you know, everybody. I mean, everything everybody said rings true. And you know, one thing about Mark is he was loved, and we're gonna miss you, Mark. To Angela and all his kids, you know, one thing that I want to put out there, and that they already know, but that was his concern through this whole thing, was not about him, it was about them. And although, you know, his kids are a little bit older, you never get used to losing a parent. And so what I will say to anybody listening, text message, you know, phone call, you know, maybe not right now, but like Cody said, this isn't something that should go on for the next 2 weeks. This is something that we need to take that torch and carry for the rest of our lives, because he gave his life for the cause, for the brotherhood, for the community, and that's just who Mark was. So thank you guys for stopping in today, you know, on the holiday to spend time away from your family to come and honor him. Mark, we love you. We ain't gonna forget you, brother. And to anybody out there that's struggling the way we are, just remember his motto: win the day, one foot in front of the other. As Homer would say, business as usual. And let's keep his memory alive. So thank you guys for tuning in. God bless. Until next time, don't forget, charge that line.